Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Please listen carefully. All congruence to you, and this broadcast is my capacity as the Chief Federal Postal Court Judge, as well as the Plenipotentiary Judge on a planetary scale. This is a level field that we live on, and the slides that I'm about to show you, I will talk you through, because what I'm going to show you and the outcome will change your world forever. The first slide that you're looking at says judicial sales deed. At the moment, as we stand here, certainly some of the states and some countries still have what is known as to have and to hold. And another phrase is to have and to hold forever. There are a variety of phrases like that in what is known as law, but they are not law, because it takes a consenting parties, one, to make law. You can see on this document that the grantor is a trust relationship, is created by the sheriff. The sheriff is part of your trustee position on your lands, your houses, your cars, your children, your homes, and everything else. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is because, did you know the sheriff is the trustee with your children, your homes, and your cars? If the answer is no, then of course you have been disadvantaged by any law on the planet, which means that you was kept ignorant and willfully ignorant. Here, ladies and gentlemen, you can see at the bottom of the text to the left-hand side, it says, estate situated in the county of Lake, state of Illinois, to have and to hold forever. What that means is that the land itself, in fiction, in under presumption and assumption, and the houses and the buildings, your children, yourself, and etc., are all held in trust. And you will come to see at the end of the page, it further states that again, to have and to hold the same by some sort of bank. And in this case, the bank is Metro Federal Credit Union forever. Listen to the language. I will read it out to you again. Please do not read it to yourself. To have and to hold the same. And it goes on to say that this will be held onto Metro Federal Union forever. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, these are all just fiction names pretending to have jurisdiction over you. I'm now going to come on to the second page. The page where it has the public notary, called Notary Public, is a notary that notifies and witnesses documents for good or bad actors. His jurisdiction is only for actors. Your justice of the peace is for the non-actors. These are for men and women. As well as yourself, you can notarize your own document by the use of an autograph, or as well as a seal, which is your thumbprint, fingerprint, lip print, ear print, DNA sample from your hair. These are some of the examples. Although I have made light of these 2 pages, what it essentially means is the sheriff is the one that's granting the trust. In other words, he's the one that created the trust on your behalf without you knowing. How is this possible? How can a police officer, a peacekeeping officer, be the grantor to create the trust that puts you, your homes, your children, your bank accounts, and etc. into his trust which he created? How is this possible? Do you Americans and Canadians understand, for example, the significance of what I am saying? I'm a person that gets to the point, and I help you to understand the logical conclusion of what I have said, is that the sheriff is the one that's in control of your children. The sheriff is the one that is in control of your land, of your car. He created a trust without you knowing and put you into that trust position. But he is the grantor, which means he's creating it. Who's going to be the beneficiary is almost certainly the sheriff himself, or whoever he chooses to be. And that could be the courts. That could be somebody that you don't even know. Do you understand the precarious situation that I have described to you? That is one. Now, you need to know this, Americans. Since the post-corona period, that trust position, what they call in fiction to have and to hold forever, or to have and to hold, which is nothing more than an adverb-verb scenario, belongs to me. I have taken over these things. It's now in my custody. If you have not understood the significance of what I have said, is this. The default position of the Americans and the world at large was that, in this case, the sheriff was the grantor for the trust and puts yous in the trust. That includes the land. That now is controlled by me as the Chief Federal Postal Court Judge, as well as the Plenipotentiary Judge. And since my position is the master for the globe itself, or the world, the earth, which is a contract, that's what earth means, it's a contract, it's now within my jurisdiction. This next slide that you're looking at is the one that says to possess legally. When you utter these words verbally or on document, which is, I'll say it again, to have and to hold, you've created, or the persons that have done this have created or granted a trust position without the people knowing. And the second slide, and this is what it means, to possess legally, have permanent possession of the house, the mortgage, etc. Even though it says until the mortgage is paid off. But further, you'll come to see that even if you paid off the so-called death pledge, you are still a tenant on that house, that land. Now, one of the ways, then you've got to listen carefully to what I'm saying, one of the ways that the sheriff creates the trust position on this is why they ask you, what is your name and your address? And if you don't give it to them 3 days later, they kick you out of the holding cells. It is because he needs to fix your name to that address in order to send postal letters to you to accept that contract. Once you are accepted, he puts you and creates as the grantor of a trust and puts you into it, thereby taking custody of you, whether you are paying in, called a settler, or whether you are the beneficiary. You can imagine now why the sheriffs are essentially appointed by the courts. They are not elected. You think they are elected. You don't have electoral powers because you only have voting powers. even then it's precarious because of the power of attorney. Sentences which I will qualify later on. One of the ways, before I allowed myself to be sidetracked, where the sheriff creates this is by trying to get you to get your name and your address. And when he does that for the Americans, he will try to attach a criminal record to it. When a criminal record is attached to your name and address, whether that's a parking fine or anything that he accuses you of as being something unlawful, his aim of that sheriff's department is to cause a criminality in you. In other words, to rig things up where perhaps even dropping a piece of paper on the floor now becomes a criminality. Once that criminality goes in, he can now say that you are a slave, because under the US, not USA, but under the US Constitution, anybody that's got a criminal record is considered a slave. The next slide that you're going to look at is the Constitution slide, 13th Amendment. And you've got to understand what this 13th Amendment is. I will read it for you. Please do not read it yourself. You can read it on later. You can read this later on my website, where it will be all posted. All the slides and the video will be posted on my website. So I will read it for you. 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime thereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, not America, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Do you understand the horrors of what I have said? And I have done many presentations on this. The 13th Amendment says, if you ever have got a criminal record, they list you as a slave under their constitution, a bonded slave. And when you are a bonded slave, you are essentially got a criminal record. So they are saying, if you have accepted a criminal record, if you accepted, like throwing a piece of paper on the floor is a criminality and you have accepted as a crime, then they make you a slave. This is why the sheriffs, the deputies that know what they are doing, vile and disgusting as they are for doing such things, needs to be put in prison. This is why they take the most minor of things, the most civil of things, and try to take it into criminality. It's because they wish to enlist you as a slave. This is how, in the Vietnam War and so many other wars, people with criminal records are so very easy to draft, something that the federal postal courts can overturn. Do you understand what I have said? If you have, please put a thumbs up on the comment section. Okay, everybody listening to this, put your thumbs up. Otherwise, I do not know, and the world at large do not know that you have understood this. Understand quite literally means to understand the weight of the knowledge. Not to bow in front of the knowledge or to bow on me, but to acknowledge that you have understood, that you have comprehended, that you are cognizant of what I have said. These are all factual, evidence-based pieces of literature that you are looking at. Now, in law, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I beg your pardon, not in law, but in jurisdiction, you've got to now ask yourself the most obvious of questions. To hold, to have and to hold forever, That sounds like a lease talk, doesn't it? That's a lease. You have to now ask yourself, is who can possibly have a lease for 99 years and, albeit, 999 years? And the slide that you are looking at the moment was the 99-year lease, which you know exists under the feudal law system. So it looks like somebody has taken out a lease on the land, on the house, or the property, on your name, on your children, in a country, on the globe itself for 99 years. And one of those parties is known as the Commonwealth, which no longer exists in the US of A. Do you understand what I've said? Somebody has bought a 99-year lease. You now have to understand who is granting this 99-year lease. Who, ladies and gentlemen, has the power to grant a 99-year lease? And the second slide that you're now going to see is the 999-year lease. Who is able to give a 99-year lease, 999-year lease on, say, Montana? Who is able to do this? Who is this man or a woman that owns the land forever, that they can give the leases to it, that they can give the leases to that piece of land or that name or that genetic code for 999 years? These are the feudal lords. That's why I never call Jesus a lord. You're saying what? That it's Lord of mischief. I don't want to go too much into that. I tend to drive into psychology because it's all done through psychology, but I'll stay with the mechanism with you. This man or woman or this institution is totally unknown to you, that is able to grant a near enough 1,000-year lease on a country, a land, on a name. Who are these people? They're called chieftains. You know the chieftains that you make fun of in your country, or the American chieftains, or the African chieftains, or the Indian chieftains? They're the ones that own that. And they're the ones that created those leases that, oddly enough, was created by themselves through another party calling itself the Commonwealth or the British Empire. That's how it's done. And the documents of which can be found on my documents, my website, one of them is the Committee of 300. The point that I'm making is, did you know that a single man or a woman had the capacity to sign out a 999-year lease as if they're going to live thousands of years? Is this bloody fiction land that we are dealing with, or is it the facts of life? That they are so sure of their ancestry and lifespan that they can sign out a 999-year lease on, say, Montana, or the United States, or the City of London. Stop yourself and think. Think what I have said. What would you think of me if I leased my car to one of you for 999 years? What is it that I'm saying to you, and what is it that you are saying to me? That you are going to be around, your ancestry is going to be around for 999 years to see that lease through to its maturity. Mind-boggling, isn't it? Not anymore, since I'm revealing this information to you. So you Americans, Canadians, and people all around the world, if you've got criminal records, the sheriff has created and granted a lease on you. You understand? So squash it. If you want the Federal Postal Court to do that, then you have to email us. Don't ever ask us to pay for it. I am not Jesus. I have no intention of crucifying myself to alleviate to yourself of the stupidity of what you have done, which is what you did as the fall guy. And the cost of it is now what you're experiencing in the United States as well as the world at large. You see, the corona, ladies and gentlemen, that lease has run out on these fictitious people. And because it's run out, they have to settle it. And the only way they can settle it is to get you off the land like they did with the California, to bring it back to the Mexicans, because it was leased for 99 years. California, New Mexico, it goes back. And if you if you're not in possession, if you are in possession of your corona, all of which I have explained to you before, it's because they have listed you as a slave, and a slave has no corona. Do you see the logic of what I am describing to you? I hope that I am. And I say hope because I am not sure what the feedback on this is. This is why it's critical. And this is why it's so important that you make your comments and not in just the chat box. The chat box is the chattering classes. They don't say anything, do anything. You must be able to transfer your thoughts on the comment section, where it's transmitted to the world that you are cognizant and therefore have got your electricity, your electoral powers back again. Ladies and gentlemen, the slide that you're looking at, as the word stands as itself, would be all just pronouns. But within a sentence, it will be an adverb. An adverb is nothing more than a modifier. It has no place in the real world. It only exists in your mind. And as long as you think like a slave, you think laziness, you think nothing to do about nothing, you will always be in that situation of forever giving them jurisdiction over you. To hold, ladies and gentlemen, in the English language is nothing more than a verb, is what you're looking at. That's the slide. A verb, ladies and gentlemen, is not a doing word, it's a thinking word. It's all in your thoughts. And so well programmed are you, you keep asking for human rights. A human is a corporation. An individual is a corporation. These are all corporate instruments written in Shakespearean language. Thanks to David Wynne Miller. I keep mispronouncing his name, even though he's my benefactor, educator, and so on and so forth. I now control this thing called to have and to hold. This word forever, ladies and gentlemen, is an impossible state of condition. I know nothing in this world that is forever, except to keep it alive in the minds of men, generation after generation. Like, for example, the use of fear and sin, as the churches have done so throughout the ages, getting you to believe you are born in sin. I will now turn to a more specific subject on what I'm describing to you and the consequences of ignoring this. Ignorance, ladies and gentlemen, is willful. It'll cost you heavy. It'll cost you heavy. Ask every American. The slide that you're looking at the moment is sorry, just give me a second. The World Wildlife Fund. World Wildlife Fund. The World Wildlife Fund, ladies and gentlemen, which is a global organization, is a mechanism, and it has little or nothing to do with protecting animals, and you will come to see that. By the way, the word animal refers to a corporation that is experiencing, shall we say, forces of nature. In other words, when you say animal, it means another word for a corporation. Didn't know that, did you? Well, you do now. One of the jobs that the World Health Organization does is when these leases run out on individual properties, individual also means corporate, albeit on a larger scale like Montana, they will quite often send in the World Wildlife Organization and say, well, we found a rare species on this particular state, or the state itself, like Montana, because the lease on that land, called Montana, has run out. And they have to get the people off or pay what is known as settlement to the original owners, which they have no intention of doing. So what they will do is they will make up that they have found a rare species in order to confiscate your land and control it. You don't have freehold, ladies and gentlemen. That's in your mind. And when you did this, when you signed for a mortgage or a transfer a deed, look at the documents. It will have a power of attorney. That's a full power of attorney, which means that you have no decision makings on that land, your life, your health, and so on and so forth. Videos of which I have already done, which are on my website. Do you understand what I'm saying? They need to get you off your land, so they're going to make up stories that they have found a rare species. On my particular friend's estate, they wrote to him and say, when we surveyed your land, we found an armadillo. This is in England, an armadillo from the prehistoric ages that seems to be roaming in your estate, thereby trying to claim ownership of that state, because any endangered species within that estate is confiscated. And that's one of the mechanisms that they use for the chieftains to take back your land, or the people, men and women that, or the corporations that leased it from the chieftain. This is the mechanism which they will use to steal that house, that land, that farm, that castle, that territory, that empire from you. These are all methods that they will be using on the Montana people as I speak. The second slide that you're looking at, called Royal Babylon. They quite often, under name and shame, the royalists, the corporations, have to name and shame themselves, and they will pick authors, television stations, newspapers to name and shame themselves. In other words, they are commissioning their own shaming as a public announcement. And this one tells you in detail, okay, and this is not a small author to ignoring, called Royal Babylon, how the World Wildlife Organization is used to steal people's lands, farms, houses. They even go out to these countries and sell tickets to make animals extinct by hunting them to extinction or to the point of endangerment, and then the land is taken off of them because that species needs to be protected. Who made it almost near extinct is the very creators of the organization itself. These are the mechanisms, the bureaucratic mechanisms of which they use to steal your house, your lands, just like making Americans for littering a criminal offense, thereby listing them as slaves. As we speak, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Costner, the actor, has been commissioned by the federal government, which is in Pakistan, which is in Germany, which is in the United States, which is in Canada, which is in every country in the world, commonly known as the Post Office, and I am one of the judges on that, called a Chief Federal Postal Court Judge. Have commissioned him, and he does a fantastic job for the federal government, which is the government globally. That's your new world order, as it were, to say the methods that they will use to steal your land from you and the means by which they will do it. They are advertising to you by a television series called Yellowstone. Just like Kevin Costner in 1995 played the character for Waterworld, a $200 million production, to let you know the whole world has gone maritime. Just like in England, they commissioned through the BBC a sitcom called Vicar of Dimbley, to say that the whole world is also going corporate. If you want to understand how corporate instruments work, just watch that sitcom, and after all the episodes, you will become one of the foremost authorities on that subject, now that I have informed you on it. So one of the mechanisms on the last series was that they're going to, with this character that owns one of the largest farms or ranches in Montana, how they're going to say, we have found an endangered species on his lands. Therefore, now they will bring in the World Wildlife Organization to cordon that land off, where he will have no access to it, and they can make up anything that they want. Previously, in England, they used to use it with frogs and newts to say that we have found a particular newt that is endangered on your farm, so we're essentially taking over your farm. Or they would use it as a negotiable instrument to hold the farmer to ransom, say, well, you can't work on it, you can't make money from it. What's the value of it? Well, we'll give you 10 cents on a dollar, shall we, for that? Because you're not going to be able to ever touch that land again. And after he sold it, whole and behold, what happens? Or I should say, to have and to hold forever, guess what happens? The newt is no longer endangered. Oh, we made a very big mistake, but the sale went through nevertheless. Although I have put a sarcastic tone to this, this is the method in which they do things. They being the Commonwealth, the Committee of 300, and all of these liars. That's what they are, liars. That's why I had to take it away from them. Just as I now control the Crown copyrights. The next slide that you're seeing is that of Putin. Putin used to be a member of the Committee of 300, the Olympians, until he moved away and found it within himself to be a better man. The experiences that you are seeing in Ukraine, which is essentially another, shall we say, a fireworks display with no real casualties or any casualties that we know of, which are so convincingly portrayed on a television, are just all fake news. Rehearsed fake news by fake people talking about fake wars. He's leveling the playing field for men and women to be able to go about their business rather than being in a perpetual state of servitude, what is known as under the feudal law systems as serfdom. Serfdom. The evidences of what I have just said to you can be all found on my website, and that's the two slides that you're looking at. 100% proof that you're a tenant, and mortgage elimination process. If you study my website, you will have more knowledge than most people on this planet will. There are documents on there which they say do not exist. Ladies and gentlemen, if the Montana people or any people out there wish to come to us, they can do so. But what I do ask and insist upon is that you read my website. You read my website, study it, and then you can email us. So that way we're not constantly educating you back and forth when the library of information that you need is on my website. So, I want to make it very clear. I am now the owner of this phrase, which is adverb fiction, which is only in the mind for the purposes of safeguarding this planet. I've now taken jurisdiction over that. The corona, ladies and gentlemen, has really returned back to you. If it hasn't, it's because of several reasons. You need to sort yourself out bureaucratically, or you need to stop lying and cheating yourself. For those people that are liars and cheaters, a record is kept by your own cell phone that is transmitting all this knowledge 24 hours a day. So if you think you have privacy, you do not. This is an open network throughout the planet on a DeFi system. You see, ladies and gentlemen, if you lie and if you cheat to the Federal Postal Court, there are consequences because you're being monitored all the time. If you are confused about this statement, the technology is there. If you're confused about it, say 150 years ago, well, every single railway station throughout the world had a government officer or an official checking who goes out and who goes in by just simply recognizing their faces. Ask any Russian 30 years ago that traveled. They would know how true this is, including Egypt. All the men and women that keep an eye on that, keep a record of who's getting on the train, who's getting off the train, just by having a fantastic memory. It's quite incredible, isn't it? It's quite incredible. If only I had time to explain to you what even that word incredible means. Perhaps I'll do another presentation on it. So thank you very much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the participation in the comment section, the thumbs up, sharing this video. If you are still listed as a slave in any country in the world, it's because they still have you listed as a criminal or a liar or a cheater. And if you are an alcoholic or have been convicted for driving under the influence, they call that spirited, which means that you have left the realm of this planet, as it were. That's why people that take drugs and so on and so forth, they don't have cognitive faculties. And that's another way that the sheriff would put you into a trust position. He will be the grantor of that because you are incapacitated. There is a mechanism for all of this. You guys remember when you first saw the movie Rambo in the 1970s? Well, the sheriff in there played the same mechanism with the character called Rambo, because he was listed as a slave. He's a mass murderer. I know the way that the movie portrays it is that he's a hero. He is not a hero. He's a mass murderer. It's as simple as that. And when he goes visiting his friend, he dies of cancer from the very people that sent him there, that gave him the cancer. Talk to your veteran society. They will give you all this information. Thank you very much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful Corona period. Until next time, see you folks later. Bye-bye now.